I came across this article in the Global Times on Twitter, and you should know that Global Times is, now what do they call it on Twitter? They always tell you when they don't approve of the media, like RT is state-sponsored Russian propaganda or words to that effect. So it's Global Times, and they yes, so it has a kind of tag on it saying China state-affiliated media. And it's written by John Pang, who is a former Malaysian government official. And it has a rather arresting cartoon with the tentacle of an octopus, the NATO octopus, and an Asian politician telling it to stop with a signpost pointing to Asia. And I know that while you're not interested in foreign policy, we might as well talk about foreign policy as we head towards World War III. You might as well take an interest in, the thing that you're going to be in fear of, World War III, and how it also concerns other regions. We do live in a global empire, so let's just recognise that. First, we must understand the political environment in which we live and understand our place in it, and not pretend that those of us in our European nations or any nation anywhere in the world is free from this global hegemon. So as people complain about globalism, I don't really know why they would consider it in any way surprising, considering we have a global empire. If we live under a global empire, we would expect globalism, and it's not even the first time it's happened. You would expect an empire to move goods and people around its empire. And this was what happened in Rome too. Rome was the imperial power of the known world. It conquered bits of Africa and Europe and the Middle East. So you would expect it to be moving goods and services as well as people around. And of course the Roman Empire would have been a multicultural and multiracial empire with all lots of different beliefs. And is there anything wrong in that? I mean, I don't really have a problem with imperialism. There are swings and roundabouts. Obviously there are. If the global hegemon is evil, then there would be a problem if different empires square up to each other and have a war. It's going to upset a lot of non-combatants who don't want to be part of it. But we must understand the environment in which we live. Now, many of you want to blame Jews, which is childish, and many of you want to blame immigrants, which is really complaining about the symptoms and not addressing the cause of the disease. But I know a lot of people are not constructive, not analytical. They are happy doing what their group does. And if their group is only dedicated to blaming Jews or complaining about Muslims, so be it. But the point is that the underlying cause of it is that our governments do not govern in a national interest, and they do not care about the national interest or the people that make up the nation they happen to be governing. They don't care. You can blame Jews if you want, but it's a waste of time blaming anybody else without proposing a solution or even trying to work out if they're really to blame or not. But if you're not really interested in solutions, if you are lower class, low status, low income, low education, low information, you wouldn't expect anything you say to be taken seriously, and therefore you will just be blaming Jews and blaming Muslims and not be thinking in terms of proposing a solution. I don't come from that background. I'm not low status, low information, low education. I think I have a solution. I think my solution would work if implemented, but I see that I have mixed myself up with people who don't care and actually want to continue blaming Jews. And if I say, well, you're wrong to blame them, they're not really to blame because X, Y, and Z, they'll get angry with me because they will see what I say as heresy and treat me as the enemy. Because, well, I mean, some people do think like that. They're not really interested in politics and they're not able to have a sustained dialogue on anything. I've tried with these people, but they're just not interested. I've tried very hard over the years to explain what the problem is. I sometimes think that they nearly understand, but then they think it's inconvenient to agree with me, and they prefer to stick with their low status, low information, low education gang. And also, maybe they're just not able to have a conversation. They can't have a dialogue. They don't ask obvious questions. I mean, I don't mind if people disagree with me. They can challenge me. They can try to undermine my arguments, and I sort of hope they do, so we can have a sustained dialogue. But they don't. They don't even try to say, what makes you say, X? How do you know Y is true? They don't even do the basics of having a discussion, having a debate, or even trying to undermine what I suppose many people think are overambitious plans, outrageous claims. But all I'm saying is that Christianity is kaput. They can't deny that. Liberalism is obsolete. They can't deny that. Democracy is dementia. They can't deny that either. So obviously, if you want to fix a problem, something else must be the answer. And I have secular Quranism, and I would have thought they could, at least have a go. Like, how would you go about persuading the political classes of secular, about the power and glory of secular Quranism? But they don't even ask these questions. They don't even get that far. It's just, years of Islamophobic abuse, but never the obvious next question. And I'm reminded of my primary school days when trainee teachers teaching us would just hope that one of us would ask an intelligent question, and they try to bribe us, to ask questions, ask intelligent questions, and even say, well, if you really know the answer, you should, well, I don't know, raise your right hand, but if you don't but know the answer, raise your left hand. And but what I want you to do when the school inspector or whoever is examining the trainee teachers is to, well, or raise your hand, so as a show of understanding and enthusiasm for the subject. And yes, they did. These trainee teachers did encourage us to ask questions, and most of us never did. We just knew that we didn't want to prolong the discussion. We weren't up to having a dialogue with teacher. So this is my problem. It seems that nationalists are basically rather slow children who find it difficult to have a sustained conversation about difficult subjects such as religion and politics, and the distinction between the disease and the symptoms. For low education, low status people, they will be making many category errors, which means that they'll confuse, two different concepts like race and nation. That's another one that they just can't get. Silly questions like, are Jews white? Well, but why do they look white? They don't go beyond the, obvious question of, well, supposing we are all white, well, that doesn't mean you don't have a problem, because, well, obviously not all whites are good people. And many whites don't care about other white people. And as, what's his name, Ada Weinreb said, he's this Jew who said he doesn't judge people by their race or religion. He prefers to judge them by their beliefs, which you won't really know until you talk to them properly, because there'll be all sorts of people who'll say, well, I'm whatever religion they say they are, and then not really believe in it. So it's not what your formal declared belief system is. It's really about what you really truly believe, and how your beliefs will affect your actions, and therefore knowing a person's beliefs will help you protect you from them if they have malign intentions. But let me read this article, which is about foreign policy, which I think not many of you will care about, because, well, it's not really your kind of thing. It's all about hating people, and just concentrating on stupid gossip, so you can take sides and fight each other. So I'll start reading. NATO's 2030 agenda, as published recently on its website, bears the headline, Relations with Partners in the Indo-Pacific Region. NATO is coming to Asia. So the title, as you can see, is The Asia Pacific region needs NATO fixation like it needs a hole in the head. In Tokyo, recently NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg warned Beijing and Moscow are leading an authoritarian pushback against the international rules-based order. What is happening in Europe today could happen in East Asia tomorrow. NATO's worldview is simple. The world is divided between two kinds of states. Those that defend something called a rules-based international order, called democracies, and those who don't know what on earth they're talking about, called authoritarians. The remedy for this unfortunate condition is, of course, always more NATO. More NATO will come through the institutionalization of the Asia-Pacific Four, consisting of Australia, New Zealand, South Korea and Japan. Their leaders joined a NATO summit for the first time last year. Many analysts believe the four will likely become NATO's extension in Asia. This project of civilizational inclusion comes as NATO's homeland has reverted to the pattern of international relations invented by Europe, a murderous ethno-nationalist war prosecuted by a military alliance. NATO holds its expansion to be a sacred right. It has spread across 14 countries of the former Eastern Bloc to the borders of Russia. It has brought war to Europe by encircling a country that suffered about 27 million deaths the last time panzers rolled from the West. It aims to repeat this performance in Asia against China, with Japan volunteering to be Ukraine. How stupid is that, huh? The end of the Cold War brought a golden opportunity to create lasting peace, a security order in Europe that included Russia. Instead, we got more NATO. Asia too faces a challenge of building lasting peace. It needs NATO fixation like it needs a hole in the head. This Cold War zombie should have been laid to rest when the Warsaw Pact ended in 1991. The eastward march of the League of the Walking Dead foreclosed the possibility of building a common European home of lasting peace with Russia. Its other major accomplishments since then have been the destruction of Yugoslavia, Afghanistan and Libya through wars of conquest. Its proxy war to weaken Russia is destroying Ukraine, impoverishing Europe and escalating without an off-ramp and into an all-out war that threatens all of humanity with nuclear annihilation. Asia deserves better than this rules-based thuggery. The bloc politics of NATO is, from the perspective of those who recall the tender mercies of its European and Japanese practitioners, nothing but the politics of imperialism in a world it no longer comprehends. Asia has long needed a security order capable of accommodating the peaceful rise of China and indeed of the long-suppressed global South. Not what revanchists in Japan or neoconservatives in Washington fantasize. The only question was whether the world order would evolve to meet this great challenge or be replaced. Events suggest the latter. As late as 2016, the US Defense Secretary Ash Carter proposed something that sounded sane. A principled security network that, in a phrase that might have been plucked from ASEAN, weaves everyone's relationships together, bilateral, trilateral and multilateral. Incrementalism like this might have given the US alliance-based system in Asia a few more years of relevance before demonstrating its ability to accommodate the rise of China. This might, with a dash of strategic ambiguity, have coexisted with China's simultaneous vision of a new Asian security concept that, while also drawing on existing multilateral institutions and activity, promoted, instead of Cold War alliances, partnerships based on norms such as the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence and the ASEAN Way, all of which emanate from the spirit of Asian-African Conference of 1955 in Bandung. Bandung is in Indonesia, by the way. Since then, we have seen the Western strategic imagination collapse into unipolar mania. Our home region has been remapped for confrontation. The old projection of an Asia-Pacific, at least dreamt of shared prosperity across the Pacific. It has been swapped for a theatre of war under a US Unified Combatant Command, the Indo-Pacific. China is cancelled. Asia disappears. A cartography for aircraft carriers, not Asians. The clown car of NATO for Asia's is just a latest sign that the post-Cold War security order of Asia is truly over. In its place is a US-led alliance consolidating itself globally for war. The old order is finished because the hegemon that built it has exited the room to pursue more immediate brutal measures. We are in a very dangerous time. Asians must come together to build a common and shared home if we are to have a tomorrow at all. ASEAN has a key role to play in making this happen. So I'm sure many of you will not have heard of ASEAN, which is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, if I'm not wrong. It's a political and economic union of 10 member states in Southeast Asia, which promotes intergovernmental cooperation and facilitates economic, political, security, military, educational, and socio-cultural integration between its members and countries in the Asia-Pacific. So let's count the 10 of them. I should read it myself. So the countries are Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. Yes, talking about monetary union. I guess all countries have to form a kind of bloc for protection from the Western imperialists. So what is this to do with the West? I think Westerners should realise how very unpopular they are, and whether we're personally to blame or not, we are. Well, we have to take the good with the bad, don't we? So if we want to enjoy being Westerners, we have to realise what is being done in our name. I don't think even the global hegemon, that is America, enjoys the support of ordinary Americans in what they do. As I have explained earlier, imperialism comes with it, well, inconveniences, shall we say. Yes, you may enjoy better communications, but then you have to deal with more foreigners. Swings and roundabouts, as they say. But what we must understand is that it's an evil empire. Even Americans call themselves the evil empire. What can they do about that evil empire? Well, they don't want to be like the British do they? I believe the Amish are Germans who are basically discriminated against because they refused to sign up. They were pacifists. Let me have a look at the Mennonites. They didn't want, they didn't want to be cannon fodder for imperial powers. So well, they lived in Germany. They didn't want to be recruited to fight the imperial wars of Germany. And this is honourable. It must have been very difficult for a lot of Westerners who didn't agree with Western imperialism, because, of course, if you took an pacifist stance, you would be taunted as a traitor and a coward. But of course, there's no obligation to keep fighting imperial wars, and it hasn't worked out for the Europeans. I mean, let's face it, their imperial wars with each other didn't work out well. I mean, it's time that the history books acknowledge this fact that the First and Second World Wars with each other did not benefit them. It moved the centre of Western power from Europe to America, and unfortunately the Americans are not grown up enough to run a global empire, and that's why it's running into difficulties. And to be grown up is to have the maturity to acknowledge mistakes, and to not let silly people run your country or give them senior positions in government. And unfortunately, democracy is dementia. Why would you allow this system to be the system that chooses you your national leader? You might as well have a completely transparent one, and give the person who is leading you the power that he needs in order to do the job of governing the country, and not be forever terrified of what the media are going to say about him. Obviously you have to support him, with whatever he means to do, so that he doesn't end up looking stupid like Trump. But nobody is really interested in these things, and nobody's really interested in foreign policy, because it's all about a bunch of foreigners in countries they've never heard of and can't spell. There's locations they don't really know, and foreign policy is very important. How can you even think of asking people who don't know and don't care that they don't know what to do about foreign policy? So I'm afraid what happens in practice is that the two political parties will be doing their foreign policy without ever consulting the American voter, who doesn't really care. And even now they probably don't. They still don't care. They still can't get it round their heads. And what does this mean? It means that democracy is not the most enlightened way of governing your country. Because you're asking ignorant, corrupt, ask stupid people what to do, and they don't know and they don't care. So you'll always get a stupid answer. So, and this means that in practice, the political parties do what they want because ordinary people just don't care enough about foreign policy. And so I'm saying the system is wrong, and therefore, dump it. But what I find extraordinary is that Russia is still a democracy. So they don't get it either. The Russians don't get it. And they, of all people, should understand what has happened to them. I mean, forget about... It really is extraordinary. I'm expecting any day now for Putin to say, fuck democracy. We're going to go back to becoming one-party state. Maybe he doesn't quite dare. Maybe Putin has, too much on his hands to do a root and branch reform of the Russian political system. But I think actually announcing that would have the required effect on the West. Perhaps he doesn't feel he needs to because he still enjoys overwhelming support. So why upset the apple cart? But the thing is, he's not going to live forever. So if when he goes, there's a strong possibility that there won't be Russian presidents as popular and as trusted as Putin. So an alternative system that is capable of managing the transition of power from one leader to another should be in place. And I can think of nothing more stable than what happens at the Politburo Standing Committee, which I believe elect their leader and also the leader of China using the papal conclave rules. So we want the person officially in charge to be really in charge, and we want an efficient form of government that doesn't include, all these parasitic layers of, parasitic groups. I consider the priesthood a parasitic group. There's no need for them. Under my system, the group that is closest to being a priesthood would be the judge, would be the judiciary. So I know I'm talking into an abyss, really. Nobody really cares about these things. I'm not talking about Jews or blaming them, right? I'm boring. I'm not talking about Muslim rape gangs. I'm boring. But foreign policy is important because, if and when World War III blows up, we will all be suffering in the same World War that you're all so indifferent to. So, what practical measures can I propose? Again, I'm saying I'm the only one. I'm the only one with a solution. I'm the only one. Who else has a solution? Who else has diagnosed the disease? So, what is CNZ UK? So I think it means some sort of group. CNZ UK. So what does it mean? Is it some sort of alliance? It's a proposed alliance. Okay. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. You don't get it. You don't get it that it's the former dominions, well, still technically the dominions of the British Empire. So the world is forming itself into political and economic blocks. But really, they are under the control of America. So the supporters are supported. It's mainly supported by conservatives. Other supporters include think tanks such as the Adam Smith Institute, the Henry Jackson Society, and the Bruges Group, and politicians from the 4 countries. But they don't understand. It's. I mean, don't they get it? That they are the former dominions of the British Empire, and the British are just the poodles of America. So they're doing, whatever Kanzuk does is follow Washington's orders. And I think the Australasians were quite happily trading with China until America stepped in and said, no, we don't want you to trade with China anymore. And they had to stop. Now, you would have thought that, in such a in this global empire, there would be independent politicians who are capable of saying no to the global hegemon, but not really. I know it's all corrupt. It's all rigged. But still, you could be talking about these things, but no, I guess you just prefer to blame Jews. But then, what do I expect from, plebs, right? Plebs don't care about foreign policy. And certainly people who pander to plebs wouldn't care about foreign policy. They'll just have to ramp up the hatred of Jews and Muslims and talk about more rape gangs as their country fills up with people capable of work that the indigenous apparently have no time to do, or the inclination, or the ability, perhaps. So what is the takeaway message of this stream? It is to remind you all that the Third World War, if and when it happens, will be started by Christians and Westerners again, not Jews. Making all the nonsense that you're getting excited about really about nothing. So what could fix a problem? The problem could be fixed by people who dare to speak truth to power. But it seems there are none who will explain the situation as it is, because presumably nobody is interested. Foreign policy is boring. But if the global hegemon is bent on turning the world into Sodom and Gomorrah, then if God exists, it will attract the same punishment. I know most people are degenerate and atheists and nihilists, but even so, I believe that people can can be made to change their minds, particularly after they have understood the narrative as I have explained it to them. So, as I've said, who can you appeal to if it is the global hegemon that is oppressing you? It would have to be the hypothetical supreme authority who is higher in status and ability than the global hegemon. A global hegemon that, a supreme authority that is supposed to dispense perfect justice either in this life or the next. So imagine a situation when, where everybody is the same. Okay, let's say everybody is Muslim, but still Muslims fight and have their wars. But they would be appealing to the same God. So which one would win if God exists? Obviously it would be the group of Muslims, or the nation of Muslims, or the empire of Muslims, whose cause is most righteous. So who can be said to be the most righteous? Well, according to the no-hide laws, no-hide nations are righteous Gentile nations. So we have a range of nations. We have India, we have China, we have Iran. Iran's doing okay because it has one religion that is also tolerant of other faiths. We have China, which is atheist, but the fact that China is a one-party state would actually make it quicker for China to adopt secular Quranism with Chinese characteristics, quicker than America, because if America suddenly decided they want to do it, it would be harder for them, because the small things they have to do, about putting their own house in order. I think the Russians would do it quicker than America, because I'm assuming that the Russians are more united than the West. So let's say Russia, America and China were having a race to become secular Quranist countries. I'm saying China would get there first, followed by Russia, and America would be the last, because there's so many things wrong with its constitution, its government, the people, that it will definitely come last. But that's not a disaster. Once they get on board, then they'll be improving their government and have better government whose politicians are not universally despised. So yes, I am saying that the solution is a new set of rules, a new moral system. Perhaps I was foolish in expecting anybody at all to be able to discuss these things with me. I thought the West was full of public intellectuals talking what they talk about on TV, and sadly they're not prepared to talk to me. And the people for whom I specially conceived secular Quranism for are, ungrateful beasts who are basically saying they would rather die. They really would rather die. And so they are beyond hope. So who can I address when you think of all these nationalists saying they would rather die, and then they all do die, I suppose. I guess I'm just left with immigrants who will feel very foolish for having made hijrah to Sodom and Gomorrah, and And, they probably don't want to go back because you'll be, oh, you stupid, you went there and it didn't work and now you have to come back. So I think the people who are most prepared to do anything would be immigrants who, with religious faith, and Jews who, are just more on the ball, more able to follow the logic of their conclusions and quicker to come to these conclusions than the degenerate Gentile who doesn't really get it and doesn't really want to, and just wants to be left alone to play his video games and eat himself fat, and so I guess my ultimate audience, I mean, it wasn't how I wanted it to be. I mean, I tried with these people. They're just not getting it. They don't want it. They don't want to get it. Well, one of them had said they would rather die. So, what else is there to say? They really would rather die than admit that Christo crap is still working. Now I have to think about what I would feel if I were white and European and 102 generations of my ancestors have been force-fed Christo crap. I would hate it. I probably would hate myself. But then, well, these things happen. People get lied to. People get tricked. People have an identity crisis when they realize that they're not what they thought they were. But all these things can be gotten over. We know the story of the ugly duckling that turned into a beautiful swan. I suppose the problem I really have is really the corruption of the characters I'm talking to, who literally can't accept. But, they do already half accept it. They do already know that, well, they're not even Christian, they're not liberal. They already know there's something wrong with their Christo crap. Or perhaps they just can't get over the fact that they've been duped for so many generations, for 1,700 years nearly of Christo crap. And some of them are doubling down and saying they want more of it. They want more Christo crap. So we'll just have to see what happens. Thank you very much for listening. Alan Bastard thinks Kanzuk would allow no, it's going to be run by the Americans. You just don't understand, do you, about how it all works. All these countries are technically British countries, British territory, and Britain has long been allowing Americans to do whatever it wants on British territory. Don't you remember the constitutional crisis in 1975 when Gough Whitlam, basically tried to tell the CIA to sod off, and then he was dismissed by John Kerr, the Governor General. So I don't think you understand your history. I guess you don't have the overarching view. Maybe you don't really want to solve the problem. I do. I do see patterns. Well, I mean, I can think like a global hegemon too, you know. So I guess it's just a matter of not being appreciated, really. I mean, obviously I should have more viewers than my 3 concurrent viewers. So, Alan Bastard, why do you Gough Whitlam was dismissed? He said no to the CIA, didn't he? What do you say was the reason? I mean, I'm just surprised that you don't know. I mean, this is sort of Five Eyes crap, you know? I don't think anybody was consulted. I mean, do you even know that the Australian Prime Minister was kind of, he had his arm twisted. He was told not to conduct a referendum in Australia within, in his first term. He had to promise that. And he won't even complete his first term, and because you know how these things go. So I'm not hearing from Alan Bastard the real reason for the dismissal of Gough Whitlam. I'll give him a few minutes. Okay, so you say you're an expert because you were party member. I'll just. Okay. I'm not. I wasn't around, but I can certainly read Wikipedia. So he basically said, "I don't want no CIA listening posts." That's a story, isn't it? You can't give me an immediate reason. And we already know that the Australians don't have quite as many rights as the British do, because, the motherland and all that. So in lockdown, the Canadians and the Australians were complaining most bitterly, I think, about the loss of rights and, all these terrible things that the government is doing to them. Or, I don't think the British are that much better off. But what is British is rolled out in Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. It's basically that they're made to march in lockstep with, whatever is going on here. Well, according to The Guardian anyway, Whitlam was dismissed because he just wouldn't agree with the listening posts in at the CIA. All right, thank you all for listening. And besides, as the money bills were, well, okay, I didn't think it was really about all these sort of little things. It was really more about the CIA. That was, you know. And also, I did a bit of research on Australia when I was in the middle of my legal action against the Conservative Party about applying for judicial review and saying that the Conservative Party is a public body that should be subject to judicial review, and of course, you know, the establishment are going to say no. It's only a private club or private, unincorporated association, and the same thing had been tried in America during the Great Depression. So there was actually a premier of Victoria. I forget his name now, but he negotiated some deal. I can't even remember what it was, and it was very unpopular, and he was expelled from the party. And of course he protested, and in the High Court, and they said no, too bad, sorry, you can't. But of course the whole thing was rigged, because I'm sure the judiciary was told not to find in his favour, because that would provoke a constitutional crisis, and all sorts of ramifications would whose ramifications are as yet unknown would upset the ship of state. And also, before I go, there was a case in India saying that political parties in India should be subject to judicial review because they're public bodies. And they wanted to know, where all the donations came from, because it was all so corrupt. And basically, the Indians just ignored it. I mean, the judge, apparently, if I'm not mistaken, found in favour of the view that political parties should be subject to judicial review because they're public bodies, and but they just ignored it. They just carried on and wouldn't give wouldn't give information about the sources of their funding, etc. So it's all terribly corrupt, and nobody, it seems, are prepared. Well, no one is prepared to acknowledge that democracy is dementia. So I guess if you're not ready, you're not ready to solve the problem. If you're not ready to admit that democracy is dementia, feminism is fornication, which is a mortal sin, and leads to the chaos, corruption, and criminality of the illegitimate offspring of the unmarried parents. If you think people deserve the government they get, you have to ask yourself, what kind of government does a society full of illegitimate offspring of unmarried parents deserve? So we know that the Australians really don't have that many rights. And also, that this whole, liberal conservative nonsense is particularly revealing in America because, as we know, the Liberal Party in Australia is really the Conservative Party. And this means that conservatism and liberalism are really the same thing. Well, the same side of... the different sides to the warped coin of liberalism. So in liberalism, the conservatism is always a junior partner. And, the liberals get their way. Why don't we do this stupid shit? Why not? Let's just do this stupid shit. We've got nothing to lose, and the Conservatives can just say, oh, we just don't think it's a good idea. And they get shouted down, fuck off, party pooper, you're old and ugly, nobody listens to your stupid... that's how it goes. So the forces of social conservatism will always be on the back foot, in this kind of setup. And that's why I propose a theocracy, and nobody gets it, nobody cares. The ones who get it are too afraid to repeat it. Okay, so Alan Bastard is obviously an Australian. It wasn't that clear to me. Says, Liberal Party of Australia is not Tory, it is Liberal with a Tory faction in coalition with the National Party of Australia. Which is the real... I think Alan Bastard is still into this democracy crap. The National Party, okay, I haven't really heard of it, but it sounds a bit nationalistic. Well, the whole thing just needs to be swept aside, and and to use look. If you're afraid of China, and you think it's doing scarily well, why do you think it's doing so well? I'm saying it's a party system. Oh yeah, and they don't tolerate bastards. Okay, it's a young party whose leader's David Littleproud. All right, I really will go this time. Thank you all for listening.